Hi, friends. It occurs to me that the technologies shaping our lives rarely emerge in calm times. More often, they arrive in the middle of turbulence when one cycle ends and another begins. Looking back across my own journey, I see this pattern clearly. The oil industry crash of 1987, the dot-com bubble and bust, the financial crisis of 2008, and now the rise of AI at the end of the current 18.6-year cycle. Each time I wasn't fully prepared for what was unfolding, but each time I learned more about how to recognize opportunity in the chaos. This issue of our newsletter reflects on those lessons. Investor journey from oil to blockchain. I remember 1987. I was young and working in Canada's oil industry when the crash devastated Calgary. A bumper sticker from the time read, "Please God, give us another oil boom. I promise not to waste it next time." At the time, I had no idea how closely those words would echo across future cycles. By 2000, computers sat on every desk, and the internet was transforming the world. The dot-com boom and bust created both devastation and opportunity. Those who invested in survivors like Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon after the crash saw asymmetric gains that defined the next decade. But by 2008, that cycle too had run its course. The financial crisis exposed deep cracks in the system, and in its ashes, the new blockchain technology was born. Bitcoin offered not just speculation, but a direct answer to the failures of the financial system. For those willing to look past the noise and treat it as an investment rather than a gamble, it created extraordinary returns. I didn't always recognize these opportunities in time. I was too naive during the oil boom and still learning through the financial crisis. But by the time Bitcoin emerged, I had enough awareness to invest with conviction. And as I reflect on that, I realize it wasn't the cycles that changed, it was me. When we're younger, it's easy to confuse momentum with inevitability. Every rise feels permanent, every fall feels catastrophic. It takes living through multiple cycles to realize that neither is true because it's just repeating patterns. And preparedness matters more than prediction. By the time I encountered Bitcoin, I had already seen what happens when industries crash, when bubbles burst, and when the world rebuilds. That perspective gave me the courage to act differently. It occurs to me that this is why generations often see cycles differently. Younger investors may treat disruption as a promise, while older ones recognize it as a test. Neither perspective is complete on its own, but together they tell the truth that innovation only becomes opportunity when we have the patience and discipline to survive the downturns, the AI moment, and the end of a cycle. Now, as we approach the end of another 18.6-year cycle, the pattern feels familiar. Just as the dot-com bubble marked the last great run of the previous cycle, AI is bursting onto the scene today with hype, experimentation, and speculative money chasing ideas more than results. It occurs to me that this is what always happens at the top of a cycle. Liquidity looks for the next big thing. Technology excites the imagination. Early players make quick gains, but the true winners are forged only after the crash, when markets consolidate and the survivors emerge. Meanwhile, blockchain is no longer an experiment. It is being standardized and integrated into financial systems, with regulation following close behind. The era of outsized asymmetric gains in crypto is nearly over as the next Bitcoin crash approaches. But just as with the internet, this standardization will build the foundation for decades to come, making it a stepping stone on our technological path into the future, both influencing and being influenced by the next technology, which brings me back to age, awareness, and readiness. Each generation encounters disruption differently. The young see AI as inevitability, the promise of a new frontier and a way to build their fortune. The older among us see it as volatility with potential to transform, but also prone to cycles of exuberance and collapse. Neither view is wrong, but wisdom comes in knowing how to hold both perspectives at once, to be excited enough to prepare, but cautious enough to wait. I wasn't ready for the 1987 crash. I didn't anticipate 2008, but today I carry the wisdom of both experiences, and I intend to navigate this transition with awareness, preserving my capital through the turbulence so I can invest boldly when the time is right. That perhaps is the true advantage of living through multiple cycles. Not that we can predict the future better, but that we can endure uncertainty with steadier hands. AI may well define the next 20 years the way the internet defined the last 20, but the real test for any generation of investors is not whether we see it coming, it's whether we've learned enough from the past to survive the downturns and still have the courage to build on the other side. Investor Skills Corner. This issue's glossary highlights some of the concepts and terms referenced in this newsletter. 1. Asymmetric gains, investment returns where the upside potential far outweighs the downside risk, often seen in emerging technologies. 2. Standardization, the process by which experimental technologies consolidate into stable platforms adopted by the mainstream. 3. 18.6-year cycle, a long-term economic rhythm often tied to real estate and credit markets, marked by expansion, speculation, and eventual reset. 4. AI speculation versus AI infrastructure, differentiating between companies riding the hype of artificial intelligence and those building the tools that will survive long term. 5. Cycle awareness, the skill of recognizing not just immediate market moves, but where we are in the broader rhythm of boom and bust. Final thoughts. Looking back, I see that every cycle has tested me differently. In youth, I mistook growth for permanence. In midlife, I mistook collapse for catastrophe. Only with time did I begin to see both as temporary and both as necessary. Each generation approaches disruption with its own bias. The young carry optimism, the older carry caution. But perhaps wisdom lies in holding both, to let optimism fuel our curiosity and caution guard our capital. As this cycle winds down, with blockchain moving from experiment to infrastructure and AI exploding into possibility, I find myself asking a different kind of question. Not where will the next crash come from, but am I building the awareness, the discipline, and the courage to ensure that when this cycle ends and the next begins, I will not just survive it, but shape it? I'd love to hear from you. What lessons have past cycles taught you, and how are you preparing to apply them as we pass through the end of this cycle and enter the next? Until next time, enjoy the rest of summer while the markets are relatively quiet. P.S. If you'd like to learn more or get involved in our Friday discussions, send me an email. I'd love to have you join us.